Hi, welcome to our online author talk today. We are very excited to be talking to Barbara Hannay, and she's written, well, this is her latest book, The Sister's Gift, which I have read, so I do know the title. My name is Angela. I have Jacinta with me and Barbara.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to let everyone know that this book is available through our libraries, so you can put it on hold either by going online, walking in our doors, or giving us a call. We're very excited to say it's also in ebook format, and you can get it on our borrow box, so you can get it delivered straight to your home without even leaving if you want. So that's really exciting. And also Dimmicks at Glenelg is stocking this book, so you can pop in there, pick up that book, or give them a call and do an online order as well. So there's multiple ways that you can read this book, and it's well worth the read, I have to say, as I've just finished it this morning, just in time for this event today. So if you do have any questions for Barbara today, if you ask them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you can't see the Q&A, just hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen and it'll pop up. And we'll answer all the questions at the end. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Jacinta, who is going to ask some questions too, because as I've said, I've read the book and Jacinta has as well. Over to you.
Well, thanks, Angela. Well, thank you for joining us today, Barbara. Now, the book, The Sister's Gift, is a very character-rich story I found when I was reading it. So did the plot or the characters come to you first in writing The Sister's Gift?
Definitely the character of Freya came to me first. I actually started thinking about her 12 months earlier while I was rewriting last year's book, which was Meet Me in Venice here, because I had to pitch 2 ideas to my editor. And I knew I wanted to write about a woman in midlife who had hit rock bottom. I didn't have the surrogacy idea at first. I just wanted a woman who was having to start all over again. Her marriage had broken up, and along with the marriage, she lost her job because she was in business with her husband. And at first I thought I might, because I knew she was living on the Sunshine Coast, because she was Daisy from Meet Me in Venice's friend. And I thought I might just take her up into the hills behind the Sunshine Coast into a little shack or something like that. No, I did want her to have a relationship with a young woman, though. Get to know one, and that was part of her journey. And it was only later that the whole surrogacy issue came as a way of strengthening that original idea. Yeah, so it was definitely Freya who was there first for me.
Oh, wonderful. There's 3 fantastic characters, all very strong characters in their own way, Freya, Pearl and Billy. So you sort of touched on that, but did a certain character, was it Freya, resonate with you more than others?
I think my sympathies were always with Freya from the start. And I admit, I just suppose I should explain for some readers that it's a story about Freya having a surrogate baby for her sister Pearl, and the baby is Billy, and that all happened 24 years ago. So now Billy's a young woman, and yeah, my sympathies were with Freya, right, as I explained right from the start. And I probably paint Pearl in a bit of a negative light for quite a way into the book, but yeah, I wanted what stories are all about. And so I had to have a journey for Pearl as well, and for Freya and Pearl to fix up their relationship, because unfortunately the surrogacy that Freya had hoped would be just a wonderfully generous gift came with some extra issues, as you know.
Yeah, certainly. And something that I was thinking when I was reading was, throughout the book, the chapters you'll read between Freya and then Billy. Had you thought of including Pearl at all, or was there a reason you kept to just seeing the 2 perspectives?
Yeah, I think I wanted the reason why Pearl takes off, because Pearl goes off on her grey nomad journey, leaving Freya and Billy alone. I wanted the reasons for her doing that to be a secret, and I couldn't really see how I was going to get around doing that without, if I got inside her head, we'd be exposed to all her problems. So there were things there that I needed to keep to reveal later. That's how I felt. Yeah. Would you have liked to have heard Pearl's point of view more?
At some points when I was reading it, it was, you know, because you do see the two sides of the story, and so it would have been interesting to see Pearl's, but I do see how that was done, and I liked that, you know, as the story goes on, you do see more from Pearl, and as Pearl comes into the story and comes into the picture, you do see more from her perspective as well. Yeah. Now, another question. As an author of over 10 books, do you have any tips for any aspiring writers?
Oh, look, I think it's important to write the sorts of stories that you like to read, and not what you think might be selling or what you hear, you know, people are looking for, that sort of thing. And I think, yeah, reading a lot is important, and then just getting stuck in and having a go. My own daughter is having a go at writing at the moment, and I'm really loving watching her tentatively starting and then just realising, you know, a little bit more and a little bit more, and like a rolling stone gathering confidence, and yeah, just push on. But getting feedback is helpful too. And there are lots of online writing organisations. If you're interested in writing stories with romance in them, as I do, Romance Writers of Australia is a very good organisation, very helpful. And the other thing, well, it depends whether you want to be self-published or whether you're looking for a traditional publisher. Don't give up at the first rejection. I see so many people, I mean, rejection hurts, there's no doubt about it. And I've had rejections, and so I know what it's like. But it is, you know, it is a bit of a journey. You can't expect to become a professional singer without, you know, learning a few things, you know, putting in a few years of training and hard work. So I think the same thing happens with the writing.
Absolutely. Now, what do you personally as an author find to be the most rewarding part of writing a story?
That's an interesting question. I like emotion. I always need to know that I've got an emotional core for the story before I start. I'm very conscious of trying to keep the pace going and not getting bogged down. But I do love a sense of setting as well. A sense of place is always important to me. But I like the whole process, I must admit. Yeah, I don't have a favourite part. No. Getting to the end is always good. Knowing that there is an end. I usually have a panic point about a third of a way into a book where I think, I'm never going to have enough words to tell this story, or, you know, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. The whole process is the reward itself.
Yeah, I guess I've come to learn that, you know, it's not getting any easier. It never gets any easier, but I sort of trust my process a bit more now than when I first started. Yeah.
Oh, good. Now, you've mentioned just briefly there setting being important. So the setting of Magnetic Island, or Maggie Island, as it's mentioned in the book, it felt like such a strong feature of the story itself. So can you tell us a little bit more why you chose this setting?
Yeah, well, as I said, originally I thought I might set it, you know, down further south. I think I actually like what I decided I liked. I wanted a tourist destination because I'd just written about Venice, and I had even thought at one stage that I might take Freya overseas to a Greek island or something like that. And then I thought, no, I think I want to stick to Australia. And I played around with the Daintree. But what I liked about the idea of the island was its small population. There's only 2,000, and it's a series of little villages separated by headlands. So they're almost like little tiny country towns. And we all know that if there's secrets and gossip and all those sorts of things going on, that you know, a sort of a pressure cooker setting like that helps to add a bit of drama to the plot. So apart from the fact that I know the island really well, we've lived here since the early 70s in the north. We've had many family holidays there. We even lived there for 4 months at one stage while a house was being built. So I just loved the idea of, yeah, once I hit on it, I thought, why haven't I thought of this before? And because I really enjoyed sharing it. I think it's one of Australia's better kept secrets in a way, because the Hinchinbrook Islands and the islands off Cairns are all really well known, but Magnetic's not so well known, but it really is worth sharing.
I must say, when I was reading it, it was a nice little escape, you know, from wintry Adelaide to being up in Queensland. It certainly felt like a nice little holiday. Now, you mentioned briefly as well with the gossip that does certainly flow through in the story, and with as the plot develops, that certainly takes that has a big role in it too as the story goes on. So had you thought of including more characters in a more prominent part of the story, or were they you know, some of the others on the island, some of the other locals?
Well, I give the school teacher a bit of a role, and her daughter, but I felt with having these three women, and I mean, we haven't talked about Billy's story, but she has quite a journey of her own to make, which is separate from her aunt and mother. I felt, and then there's the men in their lives. I felt I had enough without bringing too many more secondary characters in, you know, into any more prominence. But I do understand that sometimes a whole community and a bigger feel can be very appealing. So, yeah, but I thought for this story I had enough going on. Yeah.
It was certainly good having three very strong female characters in the book, I must say. Now, like you said, with Billy, she goes on such a journey herself. She's not quite in such a desperate situation as Freya is as the story starts, but she's certainly facing some heartache of her own at the beginning. So do you want to tell us a little bit about about how Billy's character developed?
Well, it probably doesn't hurt to mention the fact that Billy's pregnant. I mean, you find out fairly early in the story anyhow. She's been away overseas and she doesn't realise until she's come back that she's pregnant, but the relationship with the fellow over there has already broken down. And that had been originally one of my thoughts with Freya, you know, way back, even before I had the surrogacy. I thought perhaps she would befriend a young pregnant woman who needed help, and Freya hadn't had children of her own, so there was that sense of wanting to mother this younger woman. But I also threw in for Billy the complication of having cruised a yacht up the coast from Brisbane back up to Townsville, and having had an encounter with a nasty skipper on that yacht, you know, who was sexually made a nuisance of himself with her to the point that she escaped the boat and didn't want to get back on with him. But then it was even a more serious situation happens with another woman on the yacht subsequently, and Billy ends up becoming involved in a court case to help that girl out. Yeah, so she has quite a lot on her plate, as well as apart from what's going on between her mum and her aunt. Yeah.
I really loved, when I was reading myself, the support networks. There's lots of different support networks, either, you know, between Billy and Freya's relationship as aunt and niece, and mother and daughter, and mother and child, and there's lots of different support networks in the story. So yeah, did you have a particular favourite of the different bonds and relationships?
Well, I actually like Billy's relationship with her dad, Troy, too. I mean, they only have a few conversations, but yeah, there was a suggestion that they'd been really close, and she was sometimes more comfortable with Troy than she was with her own mum, which can sometimes happen between daughters and dads. And if mum's the one who's had to monitor the homework and you know, all those things at school, and dads get off a bit more lightly. So yeah. But I did like rather like Seb, Freya's the second chance guy.
Freya's old flame.
Old flame, that's the word. Thank you. Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned with Seb, and there's also the character of Dan. So, did you have any inspiration for where these males came into the story, even Troy himself?
You mean from real life?
Yeah, were they just a character you developed, or any inspiration there?
No, Seb's an artist, and I do like, I've always loved art. You know, art was my second favourite subject at school, and so just having an artist character was fun for me. And I do like second chance stories. I think it's one of my favourite tropes in a romance, for want of a better word. Dan, I don't know, he just arrived for me. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you to Dan. You know, I'm not a plotter, and sometimes I write fairly organically, and the characters just sort of come to me sometimes and evolve as I go. I'm a slow writer. I'd love to write a quick first draft and then go back and rework, but I'm the other way around. I'm very slow, and I keep fiddling and reworking as I go, possibly because I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know my characters. They have to come to me along the way, and yeah, so there's not a lot of really obvious sort of planning for me with those characters. Yeah, it's more how I feel and how it all seems to be working.
I quite liked that with Dan. He didn't come into the story until a little bit later on. Maybe it was about a third of the way into the story. And so I certainly hadn't seen that one coming. But as you learn more about him, and as you learn more about his own family and his own life, it was certainly interesting as that character developed a fair way along in the story. So how long did it take you to write The Sister's Gift?
Probably around the 6 to 7 month kind of mark. I actually wrote it last year through a fairly tumultuous year in that we moved. So we went through the whole business of selling up there, which was a bit up and down with, you know, one sale falling over and, you know, those sorts of things that happened. And then the move back to towns, because we were living on the Atherton tableland, which is up behind Cairns, and we had an acreage up there and had been playing at farmers. With pigs and chooks and, you know, growing things. So the whole business of having to say goodbye to friends and then find a new home, you know, I was writing through all of that, and I was really worried that this story would fall over in the middle amidst all that. And I was just so grateful that the characters felt so natural every time I sat down to write. They were there for me, and yeah. But yeah, probably 6 to 7 months to answer your question in a long-winded way.
Oh, all the way through. Oh, wonderful. Now we've received a question. We've got someone saying here, I visited Magnetic Island and it's a beautiful place. Now you've mentioned that it's not well known as some of the other islands in Queensland. And so as someone who's lived in many places in Queensland, what would you consider the best kept secret if someone's looking for another holiday destination in Australia?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the Atherton tablelands are beautiful. There's rainforest and lakes and waterfalls, and it's just an hour up the hill from Cairns, and it's cool. So if you find the tropics a bit much, it's always 7 or 8 degrees cooler up there, and we actually had fireplaces in winter and things like that. So that would be another place I strongly recommend. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Sounds beautiful.
It is.
Well, we
it
can't
is.
travel too much further.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mm.
Now, also another question here for you. Did you speak with people who had been involved in surrogacy while researching for the novel?
No, I didn't, I must admit, although I did do quite a bit of research online and read interviews with people who'd had surrogacies. I do, yeah, I must admit, I probably took a bit of poetic license in this one because it took place 24 years ago at a time when it wasn't even legal in Queensland, and the characters had to go to Canberra to have the procedure. I sort of assumed that there probably wasn't as much counselling back then as there is these days, and I'm sure now that sisters having altruistic surrogacy have a huge amount of counselling, and I sort of assumed there hadn't been so much. So some of the decisions that Freya made about having the baby on her own, even though she promised Pearl that she could be there for the birth, probably wouldn't have been, you know, they talk through making sure that sort of thing doesn't happen these days. But for the sake of my story, I let it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, creative license, isn't it? Yeah, so because you mentioned that you weren't sure, you wanted there to be a relationship or a bond between say Freya and then a younger woman who she helps along. So about how far into that process did you then choose to incorporate the surrogacy?
Oh, long before I actually started writing. It was during that previous year where that idea was on the back burner. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I've got another question here. So do you mostly write one-off novels, or would you consider doing a series with the same characters, say with Freya, Billy and Pearl?
My publishers aren't really keen on, well, they don't mind series, but they don't promote them as series. So it can be a bit frustrating for authors if they want to read things in sequence. But I have written books that are connected very loosely. I usually might pull the secondary characters out of the story and then give them their own story in the sequel, as I've done with this, where Freya had a small part in Meet Me in Venice as Daisy's friend. But I wrote 3 books set on the Tablelands, The Grazier's Wife, Country Wedding and Summer of Secrets, and there are secondary characters from each of those that reappear in the following stories, but the central characters are new and all of them stand alone. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Now, you've sort of touched on some of your other books. It might be like asking if you've got a favourite child, but do you have a favourite book of yours?
I don't, well, I actually really like this one, The Sister's Gift, but maybe you always like the one you've just finished. But the one that my editor, where is it? My publisher or editor really liked, and a lot of readers have told me is my best one, is this one, The Secret Years, which is there's a historical thread and a contemporary thread combined. The contemporary thread is set in Townsville, actually. It's about a young female soldier who's returned from Afghanistan, and the historical thread is her grandfather in World War II. He's a digger in London during the Blitz and has a romance with an aristocratic woman who was actually had presented to the king in March in 1939, the last season before war broke out. And then they end up, by a twist of narrative, escaping from the in New Guinea, PNG, during, oh, it was New Guinea then. Yeah, during the war. Yeah, so that I had that was a story that took a lot of research.
Oh, wonderful. Now,
So,
on a similar... Oh,
but
sorry.
no, it's not really much more than that. I love them all. I mean, I love writing them all. I enjoy writing them all. So I'm just saying that's the one that, you know, some people have given the bigger tick to.
Yeah. Is there was there a particular time in your life when, you know, writing one of the books was just sort of what you needed, or it was a particularly fond time in your life, or any fond memories with writing one in particular?
Moonlight Plains was the first book that I wrote that has a historical thread that, again, is set in Townsville. I haven't said all my books here, but we've just had 75 years since the end of World War II, and in 1995, here in Townsville, we had VP 50, 50 years after the end of the war. And because Townsville was very involved in the war, the commemorations were huge. There were lots of American servicemen who came back, because there were 100,000 American men here during the war. The town wasn't anywhere near that big at the time. Yeah, and a lot of people who'd lived here during the war were being interviewed on TV and radio and in the newspaper, and there were bands from US Navy playing Chattanooga Choo Choo and all that sort of thing, and a fabulous ball in Queen's Gardens. And I became totally fascinated with the idea of Townsville during World War II, and started doing my own interviews and keeping notes. It was about nearly 20 years later before I actually wrote the book, but yeah, that felt like a big step for me to add that element into this book.
Oh, wonderful. Now, you write such rich characters, so do you have a favourite character in your books?
Oh. I've never been asked that before, and I've never even thought about it, but it could be the first book I wrote for Penguin, Zoe, in Zoe's Muster. I don't even have a big version of that anymore. I've given them all away. She is a girl from Brisbane. She worked in making cupcakes, discovers that her dad, or the man who raised her, is not her biological dad, and then in fact it's a North Queensland cattleman. So she heads off to work as a mustering camp cook on a cattle property, so she can get to meet this dad, or check him out first, and, you know, find out more about him. Yeah, and she was quite a spunky character, so I did enjoy her.
Oh, it's always nice to write a good character, isn't it? Someone you can have a bit of fun with. But how about yourself? Is there a character that you have written more of yourself in, who you feel the closest to, or who is based the most on yourself or your own life?
It's probably happening at the moment, actually. The book I'm writing now. Yeah, because I've got an older woman in that who's just had to move and feels a bit disconnected from the people she's moved, you know, so yeah. And she loves gardening, and that's me too. Yeah.
Oh, so can you tease any more about your new book?
Well, I haven't. I'm only at that third of the way through, nervous part at the moment. But yeah, it's actually set in an apartment block in Brisbane, and all the characters are feeling a bit lost or disconnected in some way, and they end up building a rooftop garden, and that becomes the thing that they connect through. I hope, as long as it works.
Sounding good. Look forward to reading it. Now, going back to the Sister's Gift, and one of the strongest parts of it too is sisters. Do you have sisters yourself? Because you do very accurately seem to reflect and write about how it can sometimes be like with sisters. You know, you can hold a grudge, but you can certainly be some of the most giving relationships too.
Yeah, I've got two sisters, two younger sisters. One of them just visited me recently, actually, and I dedicated the book to them just to let them know that I do love them, and I don't think of them the way as Pearl at all. but I have two daughters and two daughters-in-law, so I'm aware of the whole, you know, ins and outs of female family relationships and how, but also sibling rivalry. Having had my own children, you know, I'm conscious of that. Probably I'm seeing it more as a mum than I was prepared to admit about myself as a child. And I do think there was sibling rivalry from childhood that was at the heart of Pearl's insecurities. Yeah.
Very true. Yes, absolutely. So have you got any other information you want to share about the Sister's Gift, or any particular parts you enjoyed writing of it, or favourite moments or scenes, without giving too much away for those who might not have read it?
Well, I actually think that the prologue is reasonably powerful, because that's where Pearl makes the sort of decision that the whole story hangs on. I could read a little bit for you if you like.
Absolutely, I'd love that.
Okay. So it starts with, on the morning Freya went into labour, she told no one. She simply walked onto the magnetic island ferry, found a padded seat near an open window, and focused on the seagulls lined up along the jetty. While the birds dived for fish among shell-encrusted pylons, Freya took a deep, steadying breath, just as she'd practiced at antenatal classes. We can do this, butterfly. And I'll just skip a little bit. Her solo journey had never been part of the official plan, but more of a last-minute impulse. After 9 long, often trying months, the baby girl was about to arrive, and Freya had been gripped by an unexpected need to experience the momentous event on her own. Selfish, perhaps, but there were limits to her generosity. So Freya makes the trip to the mainland and to the hospital in one piece. A mere 3 hours later, Freya made the necessary phone call. Pearl, she's here. What? Who's there? The baby. She's arrived. Oh my God, how? She's so cute. I think she looks a lot like Troy. Freya? Pearl's voice was frantic. Why didn't you tell me? You knew I wanted to be there. Troy's on night shift this week. He could have come too. We both wanted to be there. You knew that. Sorry. Freya looked down at the bundle of miniature perfection in her arms, reliving the enormous sense of achievement and excitement that had overridden the pain when this little girl slipped sweetly into the world with only a minimum of assistance from the midwife. It was all a bit of a rush. We had everything planned. We told you so many times we wanted to be there for the birth. Pearl's voice was sorrowful, accusing. Almost certainly she was crying, but Freya refused to feel guilty. She's here safely, Pearl. That's the main thing. I suppose. The sister's voice squeaked then, sounding more like her usual bossy self. Have you expressed colostrum? Not yet, but I will. It's very important, as you know. Freya could imagine Pearl's stern frown now, the earnest expression in her pale blue eyes that could make her look years older than she was. Troy and I will be on the next ferry. Lovely. You won't actually breastfeed, will you? No, Pearl. I'll stick to our agreement. Right. Yes. Good. Yes, certainly. Of course you will. I promise, Pearl. After a beat. She's yours. Well, yes, of course she is. Freya let out her breath slowly. She hadn't wanted to make trouble today. True, she hadn't obeyed the rules they'd set out, but she was sure she'd earned this treasured window of time alone with the small creature she'd carried for so many months. And yeah, there's a little bit more, but you get the gist of it from that. Yeah.
Thank you for reading that. It's such a captivating beginning, I must say. It gets you into it straight away. Now, while quite a lot of it does impact the story and does impact, you know, the plot that the book does take, had you considered changing any of what you then wrote about? So had you considered perhaps if Pearl and Troy had been present, or had you considered anything, was there anything which you had thought about writing slightly differently?
That's a good question. Well, there's another medical emergency, well, a couple of other medical emergencies later in the book. And I did play around with different possibilities for those, not for that decision. That once I thought of that, I stuck with that. The person who eventually steps up at one point in that, I hadn't decided who that was going to be. So, and even when Billy eventually has her baby, I hadn't decided on where that was going to happen or how that was going to happen or any of those things for quite a long while in the story. So, yeah, I guess I did play along with different possibilities along the way, trying to get a feel.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's nice to think, oh, we could go this way, could go that way, but then of course it does impact things as it continues to go on. So did you have a favourite moment from the Sister's Gift, a favourite scene which you, or a chapter even, that you were particularly proud or fond of?
I actually, because there is a secret in there, Pearl doesn't know that she's a surrogate. And I guess readers, it's not really spoiling the story to realise that probably at some point she's going to find out. How she finds out that, once I decided on that and wrote that scene, yeah, I was pretty, because I felt the story really sort of picked up a notch of tension from that point on. Yeah.
It certainly was a climax when you reached that point in the story. So,
well, yeah, even before when her doubts are triggered, you know, yeah.
Absolutely, it's certainly, yes, reaching that point there. So just see if there's any other questions or any other stories you might like to share from the book. Just give it a moment. All right, I've got one more from myself, but have you thought of any other, so, you know, surrogacy is such a big topic. Is there any other topics which you would like to write about in future, if that, hopefully that's not giving too much away in future books, or any other strong issues like that?
Yeah, I'm not a real issues-based writer. It's more sort seeking an emotional problem. But I am looking at a refugee character in this story that I'm writing now. I still early days for him, but I do feel that's a very important aspect of our world today. I'm not looking at writing about the pandemic. And I have already had conversations with other writers and other readers, and I don't think too many people are wanting those stories. So everything's going to be set in 2019 or before that at this point, I think. Yeah. Yeah. I am, because I live in North Queensland, I'm very interested in Indigenous situations. And in fact, one of my sisters has just been back from Northern Territory, where my niece is working with an Indigenous community there. And because I'm in the bathroom today because of mowing going on outside, I had some extra props in the room in case I needed them. This is a lovely piece of Indigenous artwork that she brought back for me. But it's very difficult for a white person to write about that. There's either cultural appropriation or, you know, all sorts of different things. So all that's close to my heart. I probably won't write about it. But yeah, refugees are one that and old age, because that's looming ahead for me. And my mum's still alive and in her late 90s. I'm very, older women are important to me now, and they'll definitely continue to have older women in my stories.
Oh, wonderful. You do write such lovely characters, very strong, very rich characters. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else you write. Now, thank you so much for joining us today, Barbara. Thank you for, I'll Thank you for joining us. Thank you for answering all our questions that we've had. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what other stories you have to write in the future. We've got
Thanks,
plenty more
Jacinta.
stories to tell in you.
I'm very, yeah.
Angela.
Yes, it's. I reflected on what you just said about the older character, and I liked that too, especially with the way they met after 25 years and rekindled their romance was lovely.
Good. Thank you.
In that book, I definitely picked that up. I thought, oh yeah, that's nice. And also,
well, I think Freya was fairly young, really. I'm looking at even older now.
Yeah, it's not something you usually pick up in a lot of books these days. So
yeah,
I thought that was good. And I also wanted to thank you for coming today and or being here with us. And I also wanted to thank Penguin Random House, because without the people there, Sophia and other people, we wouldn't get the opportunity to have authors like you. So I really appreciate that as well. And for all our listeners out there, if you have the chance to jump onto our website, check out our upcoming events, and also look at our Facebook page, and because we promote all of our activities on Facebook on our website. So if you can check that out. And I'll email a survey link out to everyone. If you could feed that back to us, that would be great. That way we can always be improving what we're doing. So thank you once again. Thank you for everyone that's attended. I've really
thanks
enjoyed
everybody.
it.
Yeah, and thank you for hosting me. I really appreciate the chance.
Excellent.
You're a long way away. So.
Well, that's it. Maybe COVID hasn't been so bad because we get to talk to all these different people that we normally wouldn't be able to talk to. So it's been a steep learning curve, learning all about Zoom and all these other things that we're now adept at using. So you have to look on the positive side.
Yeah, good.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacinta.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.